For as long as he could remember, Ethan Harper's life had been defined by an enduring absence, a void that no amount of success or wealth could ever fill. Now, 35 years old, Ethan had spent most of his existence chasing the elusive answers to the questions that haunted him every waking moment. As a child growing up in the vibrant, ever-changing streets of San Francisco, he had known only fragments of love and loss. His father, George Harper, a driven entrepreneur with an unyielding ambition, had whisked him away to the city's sprawling urban landscape when Ethan was only 9, after a painful divorce that left his mother, Clara Harper, inexplicably missing. One moment she had been there, smiling tenderly at her son, and the next, she was gone. The mystery of her disappearance left young Ethan with a heart heavy with confusion and a longing he could never fully articulate. George had tried to shield his son from the storm of unanswered questions, explaining little and promising that one day the truth would reveal itself. Instead, the years passed in a haze of lavish parties in high-rise penthouses, elite private schools, and exclusive business deals that marked his father's rapid ascent to success. Despite the glittering opulence of his surroundings and the perks of a lifestyle that many could only dream of, Ethan's inner world was forever marked by the sorrow of abandonment. The ache of not knowing why his mother had left, or even where she had gone, became a constant companion, lurking behind every achievement and every milestone his father celebrated. It was a wound that never quite healed, no matter how many accolades or dollars he amassed. By the time Ethan reached his mid-30s, he had transformed himself into a self-made billionaire. His company was one of the most influential tech enterprises in the country, a testament to his relentless drive and ingenuity. Yet for all the accolades and the empire he built, every million earned only intensified the hollowness that resonated in the recesses of his heart. Late at night, in the quiet solitude of his modern San Francisco loft, he would sometimes find himself gazing out at the twinkling city lights, feeling that the enormous wealth and status could not replace the warm, loving presence of a mother he had lost so long ago. Even as he commanded boardrooms and sealed billion-dollar deals with a steely professionalism, a part of him remained the little boy who clung to the faded photographs of a smiling woman in a worn-out dress, a woman whose memory was as vivid as it was painful. For 10 long years, Ethan had pursued every lead, every scrap of evidence that might explain what happened to Clara Harper. In his younger years, he had even hired private investigators and pored over old letters and photographs in a desperate bid to reconstruct the past. Yet every trail grew cold. No one knew where she had vanished to, or why she had made such a drastic decision to disappear from their lives. It was as if Clara had evaporated from existence, leaving behind only echoes of laughter and the lingering scent of her perfume that haunted Ethan's memories. Each birthday, every milestone in his life, became a bittersweet reminder of what might have been. Even as he built his empire and acquired accolades in the world of business, the unyielding emptiness of not having his mother by his side persisted, a void that no amount of wealth or success could ever fill. As the years rolled by, Ethan's search for his mother became both an obsession and an ever-present ache. It was a personal quest, one that he never shared openly with his colleagues, for fear that the vulnerability it exposed might be exploited. He buried his sorrow in the very work that had brought him fame and fortune. However, despite all his efforts to bury the pain, the desire to find her never truly waned. In quiet moments, when the world around him slowed to a halt, he would close his eyes and see her face, hear the soft cadence of her laughter, and feel the warmth of her embrace. It was this yearning that gave him the strength to persevere through the long nights of solitude in his vast office, where he often sat alone, staring out at the San Francisco skyline and wondering if, somewhere amidst the millions of faces that passed on the busy streets below, his mother might still be alive. After a decade of fruitless searching and half-remembered dreams, Ethan's life had settled into a rhythm of calculated business moves and impressive financial triumphs. His brand was strong, his empire expanding steadily with every new venture, and deals came to him with such frequency that he hardly had time to dwell on the past. And yet, the thrill of closing a lucrative deal or the adrenaline rush of a high-stakes negotiation could never quite dispel the quiet ache of his unresolved history. The triumphs of the corporate world, as satisfying as they were, never managed to replace the personal connection that he longed for. His achievements, though celebrated by the world, served as a constant reminder that the one thing he most craved, his mother's love, was still missing from his life. One seemingly ordinary business trip to Tennessee would soon upend everything Ethan thought he knew about himself. In the midst of negotiating a billion-dollar deal that promised to expand his company's influence into the southern market, he found himself in a state of heightened tension and focus. The negotiations were swift and unexpectedly smooth, a process that wrapped up in under 48 hours, leaving him with a sense of disorientation rather than satisfaction. The deal had been finalized without any significant obstacles. The buyers had been eager, the terms clear, and the contract signed with little resistance. Standing in the hushed confines of a Tennessee conference room, with his adrenaline still coursing through his veins, Ethan felt a strange emptiness. Despite the monumental success of the agreement, a deep, inexplicable longing gnawed at him. He glanced around the room, his thoughts drifting to the life he had built, only to be suddenly overcome by the memory of his mother, a memory that had long been buried under layers of corporate triumph and stoic determination. Unable to shake the feeling that something was amiss, Ethan made an uncharacteristic decision. Instead of rushing back to San Francisco as scheduled, he called his assistant and instructed her to cancel his flight. "I need a break," he said quietly. "Keep me here a few extra days." He checked into a modest hotel near downtown Nashville, a stark contrast to the palatial boardrooms and luxurious penthouses he was accustomed to. In this simple, unpretentious setting, far removed from the relentless pressure of the corporate world, Ethan finally felt as though he could breathe. That evening, as he sat alone in his sparsely furnished hotel room, he gazed out the window at the softly lit city below. The gentle hum of nighttime traffic and the distant murmur of conversations drifted up to him, evoking a bittersweet nostalgia, the memories of childhood walks with his mother along rain-soaked sidewalks, the way her laughter had echoed in the quiet morning air, and the comforting aroma of her favorite lavender perfume flooded his mind. In that fragile moment of solitude, the ache of loss became almost tangible. He began to wonder, what if his mother had never truly left him? What if, against all odds, she had been in this very city all along, quietly watching over him from a distance? The thought was both exhilarating and unbearable. Unable to ignore the pull of that possibility any longer, Ethan resolved to resume his search for Clara Harper with renewed determination. Early the next morning, as soft light filtered through the curtains of his modest room, he set out into the brisk Tennessee air. With no clear destination in mind, he wandered the city's streets, his heart heavy with longing and his mind racing with the hope that he might find some clue, however faint, to lead him to his lost mother. After a time, his wandering brought him to a small, quaint restaurant tucked away on a quiet side street, a place that exuded the comforting charm of simpler days. The windows were fogged up from the warmth inside, and the inviting aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with sizzling bacon and sweet syrup. For a moment, as he paused on the threshold, the restaurant reminded him of the modest diners his mother used to take him to when he was a child. The place wasn't glamorous, but it had a homely quality that filled him with a sense of longing for the past. Inside the restaurant, the atmosphere was cozy and unpretentious. Dark wood floors gleamed softly in the morning light, and tables were arranged neatly against the walls, occupied by a few early risers enjoying their breakfasts in quiet contentment. Ethan chose a secluded booth near a window that framed the bustling street outside. As he slid into the seat and opened the menu, his mind remained far away, lost in memories of a time when his mother's warm smile had lit up his entire world. He absent-mindedly drummed his fingers on the table, trying to recapture the echoes of laughter and love that had been so central to his childhood. Before he could settle into his reverie, a waitress approached his table. She was a woman of middle age, with silver strands mingling with dark hair that was neatly pinned back. Lines of experience etched her gentle face, and her eyes shone with a quiet dignity. "Good morning, sir," she greeted in a soft, comforting tone. "What can I get for you today?" Ethan blinked, momentarily startled by the unexpected warmth in her gaze, a gaze that seemed to stir something deep within him. For a fleeting second, he couldn't place the familiarity of her features, as if they belonged to a past he had long tried to forget. Quickly recovering his composure, he replied, "I'll have the pancakes with extra syrup and a side of crispy bacon, please." His voice was steady, yet his mind was buzzing with memories he had long suppressed. As the waitress nodded and turned to place his order, something caught Ethan's eye. Glimmering on her wrist was a delicate gold bracelet. It was worn and slightly aged, yet it shone with a simplicity and beauty that struck a chord deep within him. The bracelet was unmistakably similar to one he remembered from his earliest recollections. A treasured piece his mother had worn so often that its sight would instantly bring back the warmth of her embrace and the sound of her soft laughter. His heart skipped a beat, and for several long moments time seemed to slow. He sat there, his senses overwhelmed by the realization that this ordinary piece of jewelry might hold the key to unlocking a mystery that had defined his entire life. Minutes later, the waitress returned with his order, placing the plate carefully in front of him. Their eyes met briefly, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. Something about that brief look sent a shiver through Ethan's spine. As he reached for his fork, the memory of that cherished bracelet grew ever more insistent. Unable to hold back any longer, he abruptly stood and called out in a voice that was both trembling and resolute. "Excuse me!" The restaurant's low hum of conversation seemed to fade into the background as all eyes turned toward him. The waitress paused in her tracks, startled, and came over with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Sir, is everything all right?" she asked gently. Ethan's voice, though quivering with emotion, was firm as he spoke. I believe I've seen that bracelet before. It belonged to my mother." His eyes searched hers, desperate for confirmation. "May I ask your name?" The woman's eyes widened in shock. After a long, agonizing pause, she whispered, "My name is Elaine." For a moment, Ethan was stunned into silence. "Elaine," he repeated, barely able to believe his ears. You were my mother, aren't you?" Elaine's face paled, and she stepped back as if struck by an invisible force. Her voice trembled, laden with sorrow and disbelief. I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean." Ethan's heart pounded so fiercely he could scarcely breathe. "I remember everything," he insisted, his voice cracking with the weight of decades of pain and longing. "When I was a little boy, you used to wear a bracelet just like that, a simple gold band that meant the world to me. I've spent years searching for you, for answers. I thought you'd abandoned me." Tears welled in Elaine's eyes as the gravity of his words finally broke through the carefully built walls of her heart. For years she had carried a secret burden, a decision made in a moment of overwhelming fear and desperation, one that had cost her dearly. "I never meant to leave you," she choked out. "I was forced to make an impossible choice, one that I believed would protect you. I thought you'd be better off without me." Ethan's voice softened as he took a hesitant step closer. "All these years I have lived with a void I couldn't fill. Every success, every milestone, was shadowed by the thought of what might have been if you were still here. I've dreamed of this moment, of finding you again, so I could understand why you left. I've never stopped loving you." Elaine sank into a nearby chair, overcome by the torrent of emotions that surged between them. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling with regret. "I never wanted to hurt you. I was scared, so scared of the danger that followed me. I thought that by disappearing, I could keep you safe. But now, I see that I was wrong. I've missed you every single day. In that fragile moment, years of heartache and unanswered questions seemed to melt away." Ethan knelt beside her, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I can't believe it," he murmured. "After all this time, I finally found you." He reached out and gently took her hand, the familiar warmth of her touch, igniting a long-dormant hope within him. "I need you, Elaine. I need to know what happened so we can begin to heal these wounds together. Please, don't run away from me now. Let's rebuild what was lost." Elaine's voice broke as she finally allowed herself to speak the painful truth. "I was chased by powerful people, Ethan. People who wanted something from me, a secret that I wasn't ready to share. I had to disappear to protect both you and myself. I lived in fear, constantly looking over my shoulder. Every day, I wondered if I'd ever have the courage to return. I never imagined that you would find me again, Not like this." Ethan's expression hardened with determination as he listened to his mother's confession. "Then let's face this together," he said firmly. "I've spent so many years trapped by the mystery of your absence. It's time to uncover the truth about what happened to you, to the secrets that drove you away. I refuse to let this shadow consume us any longer." The restaurant's soft clatter and murmurs resumed around them, but for Ethan and Elaine, time had come to stand still. With a resolute nod, Elaine whispered, "I'm ready, Ethan. I want to explain everything, no matter how painful it may be. I want us to start over, to reclaim the years that were lost." Outside, the early morning light began to filter in through the foggy windows, casting long, gentle shadows across the floor. In that moment, a quiet understanding passed between mother and son, a promise that the missing pieces of their past, however painful, would no longer dictate the course of their future. Together, they stepped out into the cool morning air, leaving behind the confines of the quaint restaurant and venturing into a new day filled with both trepidation and hope. In the days that followed, Ethan and Elaine devoted themselves to piecing together the fragments of a shattered past. They met with old friends, pored over faded photographs, and revisited the small, forgotten corners of San Francisco where memories of happier times lingered. Each conversation, each long forgotten letter, slowly began to illuminate the dark mystery that had defined their lives for so long. Elaine confessed that after the divorce she had been forced to flee from dangerous people connected to a vast secretive network involved in financial and political corruption. The very people who had threatened her life had left her with no choice but to vanish without a trace. She had watched from afar as her son grew into a man, his achievements in the corporate world a bittersweet reminder of the family she had been forced to abandon. Ethan, whose heart had long harbored a quiet fury at the loss and abandonment he felt, found himself torn between anger and an overwhelming sense of relief. Finally, after years of living with the gaping wound of his mother's absence, he had the chance to confront the painful truth. "I never understood why you left," he said one afternoon as they sat on a bench, overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, its majestic cables stretching across a shimmering bay. "All I ever wanted was to know the truth, even if it hurt." Elaine's eyes glistened with remorse. "I did it all because I loved you, Ethan. I thought that by disappearing I could keep you safe from the people who would hurt you if they ever learned who I really was. I was wrong. I see that now. Every moment away from you was a moment I will never get back." Her voice trembled as she added, "I want to make amends if you'll let me. I want to share everything with you. The truth about my past, the dangers I faced, and the sacrifices I made. Maybe, together, we can find a way to heal and move forward." Their conversations stretched late into the night, filled with bittersweet recollections of a time when Clara Harper, no, not Clara, but the woman he had once known as his mother, had been the center of his universe. As they talked, the heavy burden that had defined Ethan's life began to lift ever so slightly. In the gentle glow of the San Francisco sunset, mother and son made a silent vow. They would reclaim the years stolen by fear and uncertainty, and they would stand together against the dark forces that had driven them apart. The breakthrough came when, while sorting through a box of old letters and mementos that Elaine had kept hidden away, Ethan discovered a small, intricately carved wooden box. Inside, nestled among faded photographs and handwritten notes, was a letter addressed to him, written in a careful, elegant script that he instantly recognized as his mother's. With trembling hands, he unfolded the fragile paper and began to read. The letter recounted the perilous circumstances that had forced her to leave, detailing a clandestine world of corruption, betrayal, and dangerous secrets. It revealed that Elaine had once been involved in an effort to expose a vast criminal organization operating within the corridors of power, a truth that, if made public, could have toppled influential figures and altered the course of history. In the letter, she apologized for the pain she had caused, explaining that her departure was not an act of abandonment, but a desperate bid to protect her son from a legacy of violence and greed. As Ethan read, tears streamed down his face. The raw honesty and courage contained within those fragile pages filled him with a determination he had never known before. This was the key he had been seeking all these years. the missing piece that explained everything. Emboldened by the letter's revelations, Ethan and Elaine began to devise a plan to bring those dark truths into the light. They decided to confront the dangerous figures who had once controlled Elaine's fate, to expose the corruption that had torn their family apart. The decision was fraught with risk. Ethan, whose business acumen had built an empire, now found himself on the precipice of a very personal crusade. He knew that the powerful people implicated in his mother's past would not relinquish their secrets easily. But armed with the truth and an unyielding resolve, he prepared to take on an adversary that had haunted him for decades. Their journey led them from the quiet neighborhoods of San Francisco to secret meetings in dimly lit rooms beneath the city's busy streets, where hushed voices discussed matters that could shake the very foundations of power. With each step, the bond between mother and son grew stronger, forged in the crucible of shared pain and the determination to reclaim their stolen past. As they navigated this perilous path, Ethan found solace in the realization that he was no longer alone. For the first time in his life, he was confronting his demons not as an isolated, embittered billionaire, but as a man with a family ready to stand together against the forces that had long kept them apart. One crisp autumn evening, as the golden light of dusk spilled over the San Francisco skyline, Ethan and Elaine sat in a quiet cafe, poring over documents and making plans. The weight of the years seemed to ease, replaced by a sense of purpose. "I want you to know," Ethan said softly, "that I forgive you. I understand now that you did what you had to do to protect me, and I promise that we will get through this together." Elaine's eyes filled with tears of gratitude as she reached across the table to grasp his hand. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered. "I've carried this secret for so long, and I was so afraid of the consequences. But now that you're here, I feel like maybe, just maybe, we can finally have a future." Thus began the arduous process of unearthing buried truths. They sought the help of trusted allies, investigative journalists, former law enforcement officials, and even a few old friends who had once known Elaine before the world turned dark. With every new piece of evidence, the scope of the conspiracy grew clearer. The criminal network, which had remained hidden in plain sight for decades, was much larger and more insidious than either of them had ever imagined. It involved influential figures in politics, finance, and even law enforcement, individuals who had gone to great lengths to keep their secrets hidden. Ethan's business empire, built on the principles of innovation and integrity, now became the platform from which he would wage his personal battle against corruption. In board meetings and press conferences, he carefully balanced his public persona as a shrewd, successful entrepreneur with the urgent, clandestine mission unfolding behind the scenes. There were moments when the duality of his life felt overwhelming. The world saw him as a confident, unstoppable force in business, yet within him lay a vulnerable child who still yearned for a mother's love and the answers that had eluded him for so long. In one particularly tense encounter, Ethan and Elaine found themselves sitting in a dimly lit office on the outskirts of the city, facing a man whose cold, calculating gaze sent shivers down their spines. The man, whose name was Victor Langley, a powerful figure with deep ties to the criminal organization, leaned back in his leather chair, a smug smile playing on his lips. "You really think you can expose me?" he said dismissively, his voice dripping with arrogance. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." Ethan's eyes blazed with determination as he replied, "I may not have all the answers yet, but I do know one thing. The truth will come out, and when it does, you won't be able to hide behind your wealth and power any longer." The tension in the room was palpable, each word exchanged like the clash of swords in a silent duel. Though the confrontation ended without a clear resolution, it marked a turning point, a declaration that Ethan would not rest until the darkness that had haunted his family for decades was finally banished by the light of truth. As weeks turned into months, the investigation continued relentlessly. Ethan and Elaine worked side by side, their shared determination uniting them against an enemy that had seemed invincible for so long. They traveled to secret locations, met with whistleblowers who risked everything to share their stories, and gathered enough damning evidence to force the hand of justice. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Major media outlets picked up the story, and the revelations spread like wildfire through the nation. Protests erupted in the streets, demanding accountability from those who had once operated in the shadows. For the first time, the powerful were forced to confront the consequences of their actions. One crisp morning, as the fog rolled in over San Francisco Bay, Ethan sat in his spacious corner office overlooking the city. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation, and the world outside buzzed with talk of the impending reckoning. In that quiet moment of reflection, he opened the box containing the cherished bracelet, a symbol of the mother he had lost and now found. Its delicate, weathered beauty seemed to glow in the soft morning light, a tangible reminder of all that had been sacrificed and all that was at stake. "I promise you, Mum," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "I won't let your story be forgotten. I will honor you by ensuring that no one else suffers the way we did." Later that day, amid a whirlwind of media interviews and high-profile press conferences, Ethan addressed the nation. With his eyes steady and his voice resolute, he spoke of the need for transparency, justice, and compassion. "Today, I stand before you not just as a businessman or a billionaire," he declared, "but as a son who has endured unimaginable loss and a man who refuses to let fear silence the truth. My mother's disappearance was not the end of our story. It is the beginning of a fight for what is right. And I invite anyone who has ever been wronged by corruption, by greed, or by indifference to join me in this struggle for justice." The impact of Ethan's words rippled far and wide. Within days, the evidence he had painstakingly gathered was released to the public, igniting a firestorm of outrage and hope. Courtrooms filled with impassioned pleas for accountability, and those who had long operated in secrecy found themselves exposed to a scrutiny they could no longer evade. Elaine, once forced into the shadows by fear, became a reluctant but determined witness, her testimony serving as a powerful testament to the strength of a mother's love and the courage it takes to fight for the truth. In the months that followed, as the legal battles raged and the media spotlight grew ever brighter, Ethan and Elaine's relationship deepened. No longer burdened by years of separation and unanswered questions, they forged a new bond, built on mutual understanding, forgiveness, and an unyielding commitment to reclaiming their lost past. Together they began to rebuild not only their fractured family, but also the trust that had been shattered by years of silence and secrecy. Their journey was not without pain. Old wounds reopened as painful truths were laid bare. But with each passing day, the gap between what had been and what could be grew smaller. The resolution of the legal cases marked the beginning of a new era, a public reckoning that not only dismantled a corrupt network of power, but also shone a light on the enduring strength of love and redemption. In a symbolic gesture, Ethan established the Harper Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting victims of corporate malfeasance and providing resources for those who had been silenced by fear. The foundation's mission was clear: to ensure that no one else would have to endure the heartache of lost connections and unspoken truths. In every press release and public statement, Ethan made it abundantly clear that the transformation of his own life was inseparable from the memory of his mother, a memory that would now serve as a beacon of hope for countless others. In quiet moments of reflection, Ethan would often visit the small park near his childhood home, a place where he once played with his mother on warm, sunlit afternoons. There, amidst the rustling of leaves and the gentle murmur of the nearby fountain, he felt her presence, as if she was still there by his side. It was in these moments that he truly understood the power of the past to shape the future, a reminder that every act of courage, every sacrifice made in the name of love, could one day lead to healing and transformation. As the years continued to unfold, the Harper Foundation grew into a thriving network that spanned the country. Ethan and Elaine worked tirelessly to honor the legacy of Clara Harper, ensuring that her story, as painful as it had been, would serve as a catalyst for change. Public speeches, community events, and educational programs were all designed to empower individuals to stand up against injustice, to demand transparency, and to embrace the truth even when it hurt. The journey that had once been a solitary, agonizing search for a lost mother had blossomed into a movement, one that brought together people from all walks of life in the shared belief that integrity and love were the most powerful forces of all. One spring afternoon, As cherry blossoms drifted gently to the ground in a park overlooking the bay, Ethan and Elaine attended a small community celebration in honor of those who had fought for justice. Surrounded by friends, supporters, and survivors of corporate corruption, they listened as a young woman recounted how the Harper Foundation had helped her rebuild her life after she had been wronged by a powerful entity. The words of gratitude and hope filled the air, and for the first time in decades, Ethan felt that the void left by his mother's disappearance had been replaced by something far greater, a legacy of resilience and redemption that would live on in the hearts of many. In that moment of shared triumph and vulnerability, Ethan realized that every scar, every tear shed in the long years of separation had been a necessary step toward this profound transformation. The missing piece of his past had not only been found in the form of his long-lost mother, but had also given birth to a renewed sense of purpose that transcended personal pain. It was a testament to the enduring power of truth, the unbreakable bond between a mother and her son, and the courage it takes to face one's demons head-on. Standing by the edge of a small pier as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the bay, Ethan felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The gentle lapping of the waves against the dock provided a quiet symphony that echoed the rhythm of his own healing heart. "I've spent my entire life chasing a shadow," he murmured softly, "but now I see that the light was inside me all along." Elaine, standing beside him, squeezed his hand gently. "We've both been through so much," she replied, her voice tender and filled with hope. "But together, we can finally begin to heal." As the twilight deepened into a starlit night, Ethan and Elaine made a silent promise to each other to embrace the future without forgetting the lessons of the past, to rebuild their lives on the foundation of truth and compassion, and to honor the memory of Clara Harper by ensuring that no one else would have to suffer in silence. Their journey was far from over, but in that quiet moment under the vast expanse of the night sky, they knew that they had at last found the missing piece of their souls. In the years that followed, Ethan's company continued to thrive, its success fueled not only by cutting-edge innovation, but also by a newfound commitment to ethical business practices. The Harper Foundation became a symbol of hope and resilience, its work recognized nationwide for its unwavering dedication to justice and transparency. And through it all, Ethan and Elaine remained inseparable, a family reunited against all odds, determined to turn a legacy of pain into one of empowerment and healing. Ethan often recalled the long nights he had spent in solitude, haunted by the absence of his mother, and he realized that every hardship had led him to this moment of rebirth. The journey had been long and fraught with heartache, yet it had also been illuminated by the moments of unexpected grace. A simple bracelet, a chance encounter in a quiet restaurant, and the unyielding belief that even the darkest secrets could one day be exposed by the light of truth. In the end, the truth had not only reunited a son with his long-lost mother, but it had also forged a legacy of resilience that would inspire countless others to never give up on their own search for meaning and connection. As the seasons changed, and the city of San Francisco flourished in its vibrant tapestry of cultures and dreams, Ethan found himself speaking at events, sharing his story with young entrepreneurs, activists, and everyday citizens who had experienced loss and longed for closure. His words resonated with those who had faced their own battles against injustice and who understood that sometimes the most extraordinary transformations begin with the simplest of acts. A single piece of jewelry, a long-forgotten memory, a chance encounter that reopens the doors to hope. In one of his most memorable speeches, delivered at a packed auditorium in the heart of downtown San Francisco, Ethan stood before a diverse crowd and said, "We all carry scars, visible or hidden, that tell the story of our lives. But it is in our willingness to confront those scars, to search for the truth, and to hold on to the hope that lies within us, that we find our strength. Today I stand here as proof that even when it feels like everything has been lost, the bonds of love and the power of truth can lead us back to where we belong." The audience erupted in applause, and in that moment, Ethan knew that his journey, fraught with pain, mystery, and ultimately redemption, had become a beacon of inspiration for a generation hungry for authenticity and compassion. Years later, as Ethan and Elaine continued to build a future grounded in truth and love, they often returned to that small, unassuming restaurant in Tennessee, the place where a simple bracelet had changed everything. There, amid the gentle clink of dishes and the soft murmur of conversation, they would sit together, savoring not only the flavors of comfort food, but also the knowledge that their reunion had given birth to a movement larger than themselves. Their story, woven through with threads of heartbreak, mystery, and ultimately healing, served as a reminder to all who heard it that the search for truth is never in vain, and that the love between a parent and a child can transcend even the darkest of separations. In time, the Harper Foundation's initiatives began to touch lives across the nation, offering hope to those who had been silenced by fear and driven underground by corruption. Scholarships were established, community centers built, and countless lives transformed by the simple yet powerful message that the truth will always prevail. And as the foundation's impact grew, so too did the bond between Ethan and Elaine, a bond forged in the crucible of loss, tempered by forgiveness, and strengthened by the relentless pursuit of justice. Standing once again on that familiar pier by the bay, now many years later, Ethan looked out over the water with a heart that had finally learned to be at peace. The dark waves, once a symbol of the turbulence in his soul, now shimmered in the moonlight like a promise of new beginnings. Elaine stood beside him, her hand warm and steady in his. "We've come a long way," she murmured, her voice soft yet resolute. "There's still so much to do, but I believe we can make a difference." Ethan smiled, a smile that was both wistful and hopeful. "I always knew that the truth would set us free," he said quietly. "And now that we have it, I promise to honor your sacrifice, your courage, and our journey, by building a future where every lost soul can find their way home." In that quiet moment, under a sky splattered with stars, the two of them made a vow to carry the light of truth forward, to be living testaments to the enduring power of love and the belief that even the most shattered hearts can be mended when given a second chance. Thus, what began as a solitary quest for a missing mother evolved into a transformative journey that not only reunited a family, but also sparked a nationwide movement for justice, accountability, and compassion. The delicate gold bracelet that had once been a symbol of loss now served as a cherished reminder of the power of hope, a hope that, when nurtured, could illuminate even the darkest corners of the human heart. And as Ethan Harper's story continued to unfold, touching the lives of those who had once felt abandoned and unseen, it stood as a timeless testament to the truth that no matter how long you search, no matter how deep the wound, the day may come when the missing piece is finally found, and the scars of the past give way to the promise of a brighter future.